You're listening to Combat Radio with Ethan Dettenmaier, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Good morning. December 7th, Combat Radio's third annual Christmas breakfast for the homeless children. 400 kids this year from Lutheran Social Services, many of which lived in a hotel called the Voyager on Van Nuys, which has since burned down about 4 weeks ago, if you read the news. Get involved. Go to Combat Radio events page. Find out ways to get involved and make a difference. And I want to actually say last week, real quick, before we introduce our, the canned octane that is the Combat Radio craziness this week. Last week we had Gunnar Hansen of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He was the original Leatherface of 1974. He appeared with Oscar-nominated Joe Alves, Oscar-nominated production designer Joe Alves, who did Jaws and Escape from New York. Alves was actually cool enough to bring in some autographed storyboards from Jaws for our upcoming silent auction for the Combat Radio Christmas event for homeless children. And Gunnar, Carl Gottlieb, screenwriter of Jaws, was in on it too. I don't want to leave him out because I don't want his angry tweets later. But Gunnar was cool enough to autograph some chainsaws for said auction. So if you want a shot, actually, at winning an autographed chainsaw signed by Gunnar Hansen, the original Leatherface from 1974, well, you'll have it December 7th at the Combat Radio Christmas event for homeless children. And another thing, his book, it's actually Chainsaw Confidential. I read it in one sitting. I crashed his book signing afterwards, after his broadcast here. The book is pretty brilliant, and if you've spent any time, as I have unfortunately, in independent filmmaking ranks, then you can relate to it, but the stories are hilarious. So I recommend you go to Chronicle Books, get Chainsaw Confidential by Gunnar Hansen. And I want to thank, actually, Ellie Mason over at Sears, who hooked me up with the chainsaw. She was the chainsaw guru that night, outfitted us, and she's got a special thank you coming from us here at Combat Radio soon. So Ellie Mason, thank you for selling us the chainsaw. The chainsaw, a soccer ball signed by the Galaxy, including David Beckham, a couple of other interesting the Jaws items like the Jaws storyboards. That's all going to be on display at Westfield Mall in Valencia starting November 1st. For 5 weeks leading up to the event. And anything else that's going to be of absolute awesomeness will be in that auction case. So if you're in the mall Christmas shopping, you will see some of the high-octane donations that are coming in. And then you'll also know who to thank. Now, time to start the show. With me, actually, not only on time, but actually early, and was laughing when I stumbled in late, Tom Vitorino, manager to the stars, such acts as Robbie Krieger of The Doors, The Cult, Fuel, etc., etc. He's doing some damage. Tom, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. That was very interesting. It's the first time I ever heard soccer ball and chainsaw in the same sentence.
Well, there you go. See, you never know what you'll hear here.
First time.
Soccer ball signed by Landon Donovan, David Beckham, and the Galaxy. It's up for auction. It'll be up. And the chainsaw, Gunnar Hansen was gracious. He signed chainsaws left and right for us.
That's amazing.
Yeah, brilliant.
Cool.
Also joining us, I don't feel tardy, Mark Ryan, Bumblebee from the Transformer films, now Transformers 1, 2, 3, and now 4.
And 4, yeah.
Working with Michael Bay on the 4th. He's
Wow.
also one of the stars of the upcoming Stars pirate epic Black Sails. Welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Obviously on the new celebrity timetable.
Steady now. No. I took a couple of sleeping pills last night, which I very rarely do, and slept through.
Is that what you call it when you drink a half bottle of Smirnoff?
Smirnoff Lime.
Come on, bro. We all know each other well enough. I took some sleeping pills. I want to let me introduce our very special guest. He's actually making his first appearance with us on Combat Radio to bring some Halloweenness to the program. He's an authority in all things folklore. He is a professor at USC, TokThompson. You got the coolest name, I think, of anybody on a college campus.
Oh, very much.
I've seen you on several documentaries on the History Channel. I know you did a tour of duty with Ancient Aliens, although you said that was a kind of an iffy situation. But welcome to the program. You are, in fact, a folklorist, and this guy sitting next to you, it's like Christmas for him because he'll tell you where the Nazi time machine is buried, and he'll tell you everything Halloween. You've written some books on it, haven't you?
I've written 2 books about the psychology and the history of the imagery in tarot cards, and within that is enshrined, I guess, a framework of a spiritual system that includes the Wheel of the Year, quantum mechanics, and Jungian psychology.
Does any of that make sense to you, Tok?
I'm sorry?
Does any of what he just said make sense to you?
I'd have to hear the fuller version, I think. But
he does a lot of work. In fact, he's doing a biography right now with John Matthews. And John Matthews is a
Johnny
PhD
Matthews is
too.
a world
Yeah.
expert on King
By the
Arthur,
way,
yeah. It's got all thing Celtic.
Whenever your biography comes up on this show, I'm going to have to remind you, you've done over 100 episodes here. If we
You'll
don't
be
appear
in it.
in that
Don't
fucking
worry,
thing,
you're going to be in it.
you are in deep shit.
I heard there's one sentence.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I did 100
Yeah.
episodes of Combat Radio.
We're actually, it's kind of funny because I was actually going through one of the chapters regarding First Night, my involvement with the film First Night, and working with Richard Gere, and we had to cut so much stuff out because either somebody's going to get sued or. And I like Richard, don't get me wrong, he's a lovely guy.
You
but
got to write it all as a journal and keep it in and then edit it out.
that's exactly what we're doing. We went through it and said, no, we can't.
But keep
say
a
that.
version for your friends. And let's be honest for the record. I mean, this is not what Dr. Thompson's here to talk. Is it Dr. Thompson?
Sure, Dr. Thompson, Professor Thompson.
Professor
Toke, whatever,
Thompson, Toke,
whatever you prefer.
Well, you do have
My
the coolest
students usually
name.
end up calling me Professor Toke, so I
Professor Toke?
That's a badass name.
That is a badass name.
Isn't
A
it?
university that's got a certain, ring to it, I guess.
Yeah.
Hey, Professor Toke, man.
What was I going to say? I was going to say
We were
something.
talking about, I can't remember. You were talking about First Night and writing biographies.
Well, that movie is
Richard
god
Gere,
awful,
yes.
so who cares? I mean,
It
the
was
fact that anyone's
great.
writing
I
about
loved
that
it. It's
movie.
a classic now. It shows on.
It is not a classic. No, bro, come on, man. Beckett is a classic. Okay, Casablanca is a classic. The day they show First Night on Turner Classic Movies, I'm getting rid of my direct.
It's been I believe it's been shown on Turner
No,
Classic.
it hasn't. It has not.
I
It
enjoyed
has
it anyway.
not.
I got
Listen.
to work with this guy called Bob Anderson. That's what we're talking about. Bob was the man who choreographed the fight in Princess Bride. He did Highlander, did Zorro. He's done he started working with Errol Flynn when Errol Flynn,
Right.
did
Master of Ballantrae.
And Bob was an Olympic fencer who was also a Royal Marine during the Second World War and was sunk twice and survived.
Yeah.
So Bob was something of a legend. When I was working with him, he was already this massive figure, and he asked me to assist him. So I
Do
did.
you fence, Mark?
I don't like fencing, to be honest with you. Fencing is a sport to me. I actually prefer a thing called iaido, which is a Japanese sword form. It's called the way of the sword, which is much more graceful.
I tried
control.
fencing. It's hard.
Fencing's hard, and it's also I don't know. It's
Yeah.
pokey and
Very
and
specific.
small, very specific, and each weapon's got a different scoring system. So I wasn't kind of into it that much, but the Japanese stuff, the iaido, I really
Cool.
liked. I was taught that by a man called Michael J, who was a British Airways pilot and the only man that's been allowed to take part in some of the samurai.
Why don't we make that a part of the Christmas breakfast? We can have sword fighting.
Yeah, that's always.
We could do that. I could do that. Archery is what you want to do, isn't
I
it?
want to do archery. My kid wants to do archery. I've done archery. My kid wants to do it, but we're not here to talk about
Archery.
sword fighting.
I'll let someone shoot an apple off my head at the Christmas
I've done it.
breakfast.
If they'd give what?
I'm beginning to understand why you guys call this combat
Radio.
Yeah,
It's like
okay,
the
yeah.
Because it's completely clueless and directionless.
Right.
I've done it. I had a guy at a festival put an armored helmet on, and they put an apple on the top of it. I actually have the photograph.
But would you let a man named Toke shoot that apple off?
Well,
your
if
head?
he
That's
had a
the question
shield and he
today.
was fully armored with his thing, and so he was safe. But I did.
You're never really
Your
completely
name,
safe, yeah.
your name. That's actually an Alaskan Native American name you were saying.
Yeah,
or-
it's actually Athabascan from Alaska name. I grew up in Alaska, so.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not a member of the tribe or anything like that. It's just my parents grew up kind of in the Athabascan area, and I was like the youngest kid, so I'm the only one with the weird name.
Could you see Russia from your back porch?
Yeah, really. That's the big question now, isn't it, when it comes to Alaska?
I'm fascinated by this. So how did you become? Why did you get into the whole? I mean, it's a big subject. Obviously, there's many different depths and facets and layers to all of the folklore and psychology of it. But how did you get into it? I know how I got into it because of my history in Yorkshire. But how did you get into this?
Into folklore as a topic?
Into folklore, yeah.
Yeah, I was always fascinated with stories, and I kind of liked the fact that there were stories that people didn't really know whether they were true or not. And even when I was a young kid, I was fascinated that, like legends. Was there a King Arthur? Well, we really don't know, right? And so I think as a young kid, I was used to the teachers always saying they knew everything, and then here was a subject where everybody sort of admitted they didn't really know what was going on.
Well, let's
So
tackle
I
that
think
one first.
that's the,
Is there a King Arthur in your opinion, or there?
Sorry, what's that?
Let's tackle that one first. Is there a King Arthur?
Or was
Was
there?
there?
Well,
Yeah, yeah.
my guess is there are probably lots of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, because that's a good one. And,
Because if there already was a legend about a great King Arthur and you're trying to be a king, maybe you want to name yourself Arthur, right? So
Yeah, I mean, if you ask John Matthews, he'll tell you that there's probably 3 or 4 historical figures that actually existed that could have had the title Arturius.
Sure.
In King Arthur, I did a film called King Arthur, where Arturius was the title that the Romans gave to the warlord of Britain, what they called the Dux Bellorum of the British Isles. And so there were several characters that could have taken the title Arturius.
Sure.
And so that's what that film was based on. But you're right. There could have been several.
Right.
And as people like Robin Hood. I mean, I did a show called Robin Hood, Robin and Sherwood, where we actually showed during the thing that Robin is a title taken by a freedom fighter in the forest. So Robin is the name Robin Hood is passed on to a series of people that take on the name and the job.
I saw a very interesting documentary on that where they were looking at the whole history of Robin Hood and thought that many people had assumed that sort of moniker.
Dr. Toke, I just wanted to say that. Dr.
He's been you looking like Wolverine here.
Thank you very much. That's a
whole
compliment.
Wolverine thing.
Dr. Toke, isn't folklore like at its simplest form just something that is assembled by people through time? Like there's a story that's sort of built that isn't really true?
Yeah, it might be true or it might not be, right? So that's the kind of fun thing about it. And,
Right.
and whether or not it's true is usually not the most interesting question because, again, like Arthur, maybe the legend was already there and it wasn't true, and then some people decided that they wanted to name themselves after the legend, so now it's true. So there's
Right. It's like
so
Paul
trying
Bunyan. It's like, oh, he was 7'5".
Was there a Paul Bunyan, Dr.
Oh,
Thompson?
okay, Paul Bunyan we know is fake. We know that was a little bit of what we call fake lore. That was actually put out by the Red River Lumber Company as a way to try to get Americans behind their clear-cutting measures. Yeah.
That's good. Does he have his own Twitter page, Paul Bunyan?
Wait a minute. Are you saying a special interest group created Paul Bunyan to get people behind clear
Right,
cutting?
at least originally. But then again, once people start telling stories about it, does it matter where it came from, right? Whether it was a special interest group or not.
Right.
So that's the other thing about folklore. Basically, my easy definition is it's just the stuff we learn from other people, right, rather than from a book or an institution. So, there's a lot of what we do in life that's folklore of some variety. What do you do when you get a cold, or the stories and jokes you tell each other.
So let me ask you, Dr. Toke.
You're going to get this now. We apologize in advance.
Is there one piece of folklore that just goes so under the radar as being folklore it's accepted as fact?
A ton of them, sure, yeah. Vitamin C is one of my favorites because a lot of people when they get a cold take vitamin C. It sounds very scientific. It's got, vitamin in it and all that kind of stuff. But there's never been any scientific documentation that actually helps a cold. So why people take it is actually, folklore. It's folk medicine. But it sounds official, right? It sounds
what do you recommend for a flu or a cold?
For a cold, I don't know, but I've been collecting like folk remedies, and so I've heard a lot of interesting ones. One of the most interesting ones was, let's see, chilies, garlic, and somebody said like a shot of kerosene. I'm not recommending this. I'm just saying the most interesting ones that I've heard.
Interesting prescription, doctor.
Yeah, really.
Isn't that the new flesh-eating drug they've discovered called Scale Extric or Scale something or other, which they've discovered that when you pop this drug, it's because it's got fuel in it, it rots your skin and melts your flesh off your bones and stuff like that. It sounds a bit like that.
That's to you. That
sounds like a party.
He's not asking me. Dr. Thompson.
I was looking at you.
Listen, Dr. Thompson's already trying to figure a way to get out of the studio. All right, he keeps looking at the door.
He's never going to make it. He won't make it there. Of course, that's folklore.
No, I could talk about this all day.
That's awesome, man.
You'll get tired of me after a while.
No, I can tell.
No. We're having. In fact, let's bring it up to let's talk a little Halloween because that's really the season that's about to kick off. I know you told me on the phone, hey man, you're way ahead of schedule on this Halloween thing, but it's here.
I didn't know this place was so spooky.
It is spooky. Yeah. Well, with these guys, it's very scary for sure. But you've done some. I've seen you on History Channel talking Halloween up, and what's the big deal with this holiday? Where does this come from, and how have we just completely destroyed the meaning behind it?
Oh, I don't know. We've given it new meanings all the time, so that's one of the fun things. So it means something different maybe than it did in the past. But some of that stuff that's really, really ancient is still with us. So that's kind of the fun part too. So one of the fun things about Halloween is that, except for Christmas, Americans spend more money on Halloween than any other holiday.
Right.
And it's not an official holiday. It's like you don't get the day off or anything. You don't even get the next day off, which would be nice, right? The morning after Halloween.
I take it anyway.
You take it anyway.
But is it any truth to the fact that maybe a league of evil dentists perpetuated the holiday so they can get give candy to kids, to millions of kids
From beyond the grave.
Yeah, from beyond the
The
grave.
League of Evil Dentists.
Well, aren't they all evil when you think about it? But so
It sounds like another movie developing here, the League of Evil.
Is that a part of your book? Is that a
Dentists
chapter in
from
your
beyond the
book? The
grave.
League of
I
Evil
talk
Dentists?
about All Hallows, yes, certainly All Hallows, because from culture to culture, it's got a different meaning. So in Britain, bonfire night, becoming of this time of the year is what they call the time of the dead, as they have in Mexico, or the time of All Hallows. So it's an opening of the dimensional bridge, if you like, between the living and the dead. So it was accepted that you had this time of Halloween where we could commune with the dead. In Yorkshire, the night before Halloween was called Mischief Night, and you were allowed to go out and
Devil's Night,
people's doorbells.
that's
and
every night
run
for you,
away.
especially if there's a soccer game.
You know,
Hooliganism.
that kind of thing.
What's
absolutely.
Halloween like at your house, Dr. Thompson? What do you do for Halloween? Like, what?
I-
You're an expert in the art of Halloween. So what do you
I'm
do?
an expert, yeah, but that doesn't mean I'm actually a good participant, right?
Right.
So I just try to lay low, keep the lights off so kids don't come knocking at my door.
You know what they say about people who turn the lights off? It's so funny. I used to get really mad at those houses. Then NPR ran a story that's the protocol for convicted child molesters, that they have to turn their light off and they can't answer the door and they have to beef with the phone rings, or if someone knocks on their door for a check, they have to be there. Did you hear about all that?
No, I
yeah.
didn't hear about
So
that.
now whenever I see someone that doesn't come to the door, I start to wonder. I'm like, I wonder what's up
it's
with
on the
this
list.
dude.
Uh-oh, well,
You know?
there goes that option. Okay.
But you
Come
say
up
you
with
lay
some-
low for
maybe vacation or something.
You lay
no,
low.
I do like Halloween. I really do, and it's fun because it's one of those days where everybody does things that they shouldn't. Right? We spend the whole year telling kids never take candy from strangers.
Right,
And then
exactly.
one night of the year, we're like, okay, now go take candy from strangers, and not just any strangers, but like strangers dressed up like dead
Right.
people and witches.
Clowns.
And,
Do kids trick or treat anymore?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Oh
yeah. They
yeah.
do. Yeah.
My
I-
neighborhood is way into it. It's a fun neighborhood.
Nobody
for
trick or
Halloween.
treats in my neighborhood. Nothing.
But
Yeah,
you're
it seems
in one
to
of
be
those
like little neighborhoods, and all the kids go there or
He's
something.
in one of those
Gated
celebrity gated
communities.
communities, man.
With armed guards
Yeah,
patrolling.
Or maybe that's
really,
why
really.
the kids don't come.
Yeah, come on.
Good
It's
shot.
They know where the good candy is. I think they've got the neighborhoods pegged at this point.
It's really ridiculous that Tom's upset about lack of trick or treaters.
I'm not upset. I
know.
I particularly don't like children. Just being honest.
So do you dress up and stuff, or
Do I?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, again, I just study what people do. It doesn't necessarily mean I do it very well.
yeah?
Yeah.
So what would you recommend for like a Halloween? You're laughing.
Well,
so.
if I actually, I think Max comment was spot on. I mean, to really do Halloween right, you should be close to the dead, right? So that means in America we don't have these nice old megalithic mounds and stuff like they do in Ireland, but you could still hang out at a graveyard or something like that, because again, Halloween really is derived from the old Celtic calendar, Samhain.
Yeah.
And that was for the Celts. That was the beginning of the winter half of the year, or the dark half of the year. So it was the time of the dead. And both at Samhain and then on May Day, Beltane, were the two sort of nodes where the world of the dead would come closest to the world of living. So you didn't know when you're walking around if somebody you met was actually from this world or the other world.
And that was to
that's
be
kind of
celebrated. And that whole closeness with the ancestors was not a thing to be feared. It was a thing to be celebrated, to welcome in the ancestors, people that you knew had passed on. Whereas in the West, we're very much fear-orientated. Our relationship with death is still fearful, whereas it wasn't on the and Greenwood Tarot and Wildwood Tarot are both tarot decks that are based on that wheel, the Wheel of the Year, the European ancient Wheel of the Year. And they're the first books that work, because most tarot is based on Kabbalah, which I just don't understand. So that cycle was very much prevalent in the way that people lived their lives.
For people here in America who don't understand any of that, what did he just say? I mean, really, break that down.
And part of it too is
Highly
the way
scientific.
it's the way you divvy up the calendar. So, like in the Germanic traditions, actually, the New Year, which is what we have in America, the New Year starts in around the winter solstice, right? January 1's our New Year. So you might notice, like Charles Dickens, he has his ghost show up around Christmas, because in the Germanic traditions, that's when the ancestors would show up between this year and the next year, these liminal time periods, right? So America didn't have Halloween per se until after the Irish potato famine, and all these Irish people flooded into America.
Blame the Irish.
Carrying this tradition with them.
They can take it. They've got broad shoulders, and lots of potatoes.
Yeah, a lot of potatoes.
So we didn't get Halloween till like late 1800s, really, in America, and then all of a sudden, once we sort of adopted that one, we're basically, that's when we see the dead.
Do you have a costume this year? Are you dressing up or what?
Sorry?
Are you dressing up?
We have a professor
I probably
here,
will.
and
I
you're
should.
asking
I
him
should,
if he's going to be dressing up.
Gentlemen,
I
he's
teach
gentrified.
He's a specialist in the
I
He has
dress up every
degrees.
day.
This man has degrees. Okay?
Oh, I love it. Like, as soon as you get a degree, you're forbidden from taking part in the holiday with a costume.
But why do you think Christmas is in December 24th? Because the midwinter solstice is December 21st.
I don't know, but throwing it
which is
back
the
to
shortest
Dickens,
thing.
those ghosts were highly obnoxious. I mean, those ghosts were very intrusive, middle of the night visitations, taking you out of the house. Real pain in the ass, those ghosts.
Yeah, they were. And when I was a kid, I was always wondering why they would show up at Christmas, because that was not my American ideal of Christmas. Ghost.
At least bring something.
Yeah.
You know, if you're going to crash my house at Christmas, bring something. Bring a few bottles of wine. We'll talk about
Like
all
Santa.
the...
Santa
Yeah,
brings
exactly.
stuff. It's all right.
We'll
He
talk
can
about
break
all the
in.
What about the
stuff.
folklore of people having sex with ghosts? Is that...
Steady now. Where are you going?
Wow,
with this?
I guess I missed out on
You know,
something.
people say all the time, like, you know, a ghost came into their bedroom or whatever, and they were
Well, you
penetrated
know,
by
there's
ghosts.
different
Could be a
traditions.
relative.
Yeah, there's different traditions of ghosts, and like our modern ghosts tend to be really wispy, right? So you can't imagine. But in a lot of traditions, like even in Japanese traditions or in old Germanic traditions, ghosts would be somewhat corporal. So people did sometimes have sex with ghosts, and you even have reports of like, you know, kids whose one of their parents was a ghost, and this sort of thing. So that's a different way of envisioning this interaction with the dead.
So ghosts can be sexual.
They can be. In
I have
many
to
cultures,
apologize in advance. You never know what you're going to get from this guy. He works in the rock and roll industry, and he's had to smooth just about every situation over. So he's got a very diverse background.
Sex is a big part of ghosts, apparently.
Can I change tack here? You mentioned Santa Claus and Father Christmas. Give us your take on that one. Because that's
on which one?
Father Christmas, Santa Claus.
Oh well, I'm here to talk about Halloween.
We are, and we'll get to Christmas, but I mean, you can answer the question if you'd like. I do have some Halloween-related questions. I mean, they made fun of me for asking me what you dressed up, but I figured you were going to answer it before they jumped on us.
Okay, I was getting to answer it. Yeah, well, I teach a course on ghost stories, one of my courses. And,
do you really teach a course on ghosts?
Yeah,
Can I sit in on
throughout
that?
time and around the world. So we look at different cultures and how they envision ghosts and stuff. And it's a very interesting way of thinking about how different cultures envision the soul and stuff like that. So.
Can I sit
The
in on
students
that
really
one
enjoy
time?
it.
I'd like to sit in on that if that's possible. Is that
Sure.
possible? Yeah, I'd like to. So the paranormal, as far as that's concerned, you know, we do a month of ghost hunts around here with Marcus Lindsay who did like investigated Alcatraz for the Travel Channel and stuff, and we're doing that. And we're sending people into like Salem, Massachusetts and Sleepy Hollow, you know, the real spooky places.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as the paranormal goes, you know, if you were to sum that up for a man on the street, paranormal is...
Well, paranormal is an interesting term, right? Because it means that it's not really normal. It's like supernatural. It's not really natural. But, you know, you go to some other cultures and it's completely natural. It's completely normal. So then, you know, what do we mean by these words? It's an interesting thing to look
So
at.
combat radio would be paranormal. Just
Right. If it was just normal, we wouldn't have to be
But I mean,
paranormal.
do you believe in that kind of thing? I mean, have you seen evidence of that kind of thing, or are you just you're open to
evidence of that
speculation?
kind of thing? You know, again, I study what people believe, so I always try to avoid the question of what I personally believe. It's not that I don't have my own beliefs; it's just that I think that they can be distracting to students if they're hearing what I believe.
Toke's looking for the door again. He's looking for the exit.
so have you seen a
Looking
ghost?
for the
Have
door,
you
looking
had
for
an
the door.
encounter with a ghost?
Yeah, maybe, but I prefer to talk as an expert rather than a individual person.
I understand that. We'll respect that because you've got a, you know the PhD, right? You have PhD.
Yeah, this is what
So,
I study
I
what
understand.
people believe. So I study, you know, what people believe about
We'll-
ghosts or Halloween or that sort of thing.
We'll get to Mark's Father Christmas question in a minute, but are you recommending earlier, you know, that kids should hang out in graveyards and stuff on Halloween? Is that the...
Yeah, I guess I am. Yeah. I mean, if you're gonna do it right.
Okay, so what do you? So you're just kind of a guy. You sit back and you just relax, and Halloween's just another day to study people.
Well, not really. I was going to say, like in the ghost stories class, that's give them a chance to do extra credit. Whatever student can tell the spookiest story. So I think maybe this year I'll actually dress up for it. Usually, like turn off the little classroom lights, put on candles. You know, it's as much as we can
What
do.
are you dressing
in the
up? Do you
classroom.
want to reveal it here, or what are you dressing up?
Sorry.
What are you dressing up as? You want to reveal it, or?
I haven't gotten that far yet. I've still got a month, right?
Oh yeah, you got a little over a month. You got time.
All right, I'll think about it.
Okay, Headless Horseman, real or what? Folklore? What is that? Where does the Headless Horseman fit into all your knowledge?
Yeah, I'm a folklorist. I mean, that's what I study. So I'm in the Department of Anthropology. But, you know, the stories that we tell each other, that's a big part of what makes our life interesting, right? Our rituals that we do, weddings, Christmas, So for me, it's a really big part of being human, and that includes things like Halloween. Again, it's not an official holiday. The government, unlike our other holidays, you don't get anything officially for it, but people still want to do it.
The government's scary enough without making Halloween an official holiday. Yes.
So, so the fact that people want to do this and are going to, on their own volition, spend all this money and all this time to do something, that tells me it's really important to people.
You're listening to Combat Radio with Ethan Dettenmaier, right here on LA Talk Radio.